Hi, welcome to Money Man, and I'm privileged to have senior writer from SA Rugby magazine with me. Craig, welcome.
Thank you.
Big year ahead of us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the rugby season seems to have crept up on us, but as we sit here a day away from Six Nations kicking off and then the doublehead on Sunday at Cape Town Stadium, 2 warm-up games ahead of Super Rugby, so that's going to come around in a couple of weeks, and then we'll be full underway.
Yeah, for rugby lovers out there, it's a veritable feast this year. A couple of questions I've got for you. One, with the Rugby World Cup coming up in October, being played in Japan, that's interesting. Do you think the parity exists? Everybody's touting this as going to be the most competitive World Cup ever.
Yeah.
The most competitive Six Nations ever.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that? Is it?
Well, I think it's quite a common trend before generally a World Cup. People look at the way things have finished the year before, generally on an end of year tour, maybe read too much into that, with the Northern Hemisphere teams often getting some decent results, but that's also quite normal in terms of they playing Southern Hemisphere teams who are a little bit tired, weary end of a season. But I think there is a bit more to it this time around, because you look at the world order and the way it's been shaken up recently, with Ireland competing so well last year, kind of knocked the All Blacks off their perch a little bit in terms of the way it's viewed in terms of who's really the number one team in the world at the moment. Your team Wales have really done well to number 3 in the world on a 9-match winning streak. I mean, that's really impressive. England's still there or thereabouts, and then suddenly you look at where the big Southern Hemisphere teams, All Blacks looking a little bit vulnerable, Springboks hovering around maybe mid-table in terms of Tier 1, and the Wallabies falling further and further back. So I definitely think you'll see a very competitive World Cup. Scotland, a sleeping giant in some regards, can also cause a surprise or two on the day.
Yeah, very unlucky to lose to Australia in the playoff match in the last World Cup, and certainly going in the right direction.
And they were competitive against the Boks at the end of year too as well. I mean, Boks didn't hammer them by any stretch of the imagination.
No, for sure. Let's have a look at the marketing around the Super Rugby this year. What's your thoughts on the hero theme that all the teams have gone with?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. To me, it's a gimmicky thing, but it's not a bad piece of marketing in the sense that I've probably got more messages from friends going, "What do you think of the jerseys?" than I have got from them going, "What do you think of the teams and the Super Rugby campaign coming up?" I think in some way it has generated a bit of a side interest in just the way things are going before the season kicks off. It's funny to see a guy like Dwayne Vermeulen, a Stormers stalwart from years gone by, now suddenly in this Captain America bull shirt or whatever it may be. So I think it's kind of a bit of fluff, but it's brought a little bit of extra intrigue maybe to things. And I hear the stadium just about is going to be almost sold out on Sunday for the doubleheader. All the teams in their new jerseys, bit of fun.
Yeah, I think that it as well. Is there any marketing around rugby? Because I think for the last couple of years it's sort of fallen off. As DSTV's subscriber base, premium subscriber base has fallen off the cliff. There seems to be a bit of a lack of interest in rugby, and anything that creates marketing and hype, and also introduces the younger fan to rugby, I suppose, or it can never be a bad thing. And when is the last time we ever talked about an exhibition game in Super Rugby?
No, exactly. I think it plays into the whole thing of maybe as well, it's something different, and then kind of dressing your kids up in whatever their Marvel superhero favourite is. And then
have you bought a jersey yet?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I haven't either. You wrote an interesting article on the state of players coming back from unions. I mean, that's become more prevalent over the years. And again, this year we got Snyman out. Who else is injured coming back?
Jean-Luc Dupré has come back from England, short-term stint with a 3-month injury. So for me, it's becoming a very difficult situation. I mean, I chatted to Yuri Rue recently, I did an interview with him, and he tried to kind of give me a breakdown of the battle they're facing. And he mentioned the biggest financial challenge they face is trying to find a budget that can lessen the lure of the overseas offers that they just literally cannot match in terms of just financial numbers, the offers from Europe, from Japan. So this is a way of kind of compromising. Let the players go for a short-term stint, get a feel for the overseas thing that they want, and still come back to their franchise for Super Rugby and still remain kind of in front of the line for Springbok selection. Because while they can be overseas permanently and still get selected, they do have a preference for guys who play their rugby in South Africa.
Yeah, they certainly get a lot more exposure in terms of TV, so that makes sense. For my two fans out there, I suppose it might not be a bad idea to explain from a financial point of view. My understanding is that if Sneeman, for example, coming back now for 3 months, he was signed with the Japanese club, and they'll be paying his contract for the next few months while he's rehabilitating and stuff like that. So if you come injured from the place that you've signed, that they pay the fee. So is that right?
It's murky territory, and I've tried to find out about whether the Sale Sharks would be liable in any way in terms of paying for Jean-Luc. I mean, they do have to go over there with some kind of medical insurance. There are factors in play there. But I've also heard that a lot of the Japanese players, the risk they take when they go and take up the contract is that they have to pay for their own medical insurance as part of the deal. But the money's so good that they can't really turn it down. And that's kind of what it comes down to.
Well, it's interesting. It must be the only major sport where guys play for 2 or 3 different teams. You don't get Arsenal or any of those top clubs that allow their players to go and play a season overseas. So it's a problem unique to rugby, I think.
Yeah, sure, and I think it's also a personal thing. You have some players who go over, and I think it does them good. Like Andre Esterhuizen said, the Japanese stint for him was really beneficial. He learned new things. He learned to play with a bit more freedom. He came back, looked at least a little bit more dynamic, made it into the Bok team last year, where someone like Damien Dialeni came back, didn't have enough rest before going and playing in Japan, came back with a bad injury, and in all honesty, it took him a better portion of 12 months to even get back to a point where he looked like the former player before he headed off.
Yeah, I think that's bullshit. In terms of going to Japan and coming back a better player. It's not a competitive league, is it? I don't think.
No, I don't think it's competitive, but I think for maybe some players a little bit maybe one-dimensional. I think and Kuan Bosch has now gone over, and he's been able to work a bit on his conditioning. I've heard he's come back with picked up a few kilograms in terms of the off-season work he's done, and he had a chance to work with Carlos Spencer, the former All Blacks fly half there at Sanex Blues, and I think that's in terms of working with new coaches and getting some new ideas for a player like that might be pretty beneficial.
Yeah, and he must be a whiz around the dinner table with a pair of chopsticks as well, I'd imagine.
I hope so.
Let's get into, just briefly, what your thoughts are on the Super Rugby season ahead. The Stormers tragically disappointing again in the Currie Cup. They seem to be in a state of flux now with changing president, which is not a bad thing. Theo Wakefield, I think, was about as useful as an ashtray on a motorcycle. You've got Saumarez in there now. Can't be any worse than Theo Wakefield.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of bring it up at a point where they've just had a whole week of, again, off-field drama and player
what is it about Paul? What's going on with Paul Treu?
Well, Paul Treu seems to be the heart of it, and there's no doubt that he's a bit of a divisive figure. I mean, he ended last year filing a whole report of grievances that was eventually kind of tossed out after an independent inquiry. Then there's talk of Maria wanting him to move into director of rugby position. That was the latest report over the weekend, and for Small then to fall away. So there's lots of kind of behind the scenes machinations happening.
I think it would be horrific if Paul Treu became director of rugby.
I just don't know. I think in a position like that you need someone who's going to have the full support of the players, the leadership around him. So there's been an issue between Paul Treu and the coaches and the Stormers setup. Then you can't have him suddenly elevated to a director position.
No.
Because how are you ever going to have proper communication between the two parties?
Well, I think he should be jettisoned out of that organisation. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I think there's much more to this story than we think.
Yeah. And I think it just leads into, if you're asking what, in terms of the rugby perspective, how the Stormers are going to respond when you've had all this off-field stuff, the financial drama they've had has been also well documented. How the players are going to be able to put that all aside, knowing that maybe even their contracts are going to be in jeopardy after the World Cup and in the years to come. Are they committing to the Stormers long term? Is this their last season? How do they keep their mind on what really needs to be the Super Rugby campaign in a World Cup year, and naturally leading to the World Cup selection or not?
That's all good points, and I think Murray can put down a marker and really make an improvement on that franchise.
Yeah.
It was so badly run before, so the bar is pretty low. It shouldn't be difficult to step over. Who are you picking to be the top South African Super Rugby side?
I'm still picking the Lions.
Yeah.
But
why?
But not hugely convinced.
Yeah.
Either way, I just don't. I don't really see any other side necessarily going to compete. They could almost be the best of a relatively bad bunch. I think the Stormers have got too too much other stuff going on for them. They haven't really bolstered the squad in any way, so I can't see them really pushing the Lions. The Lions lost a lot of players, particularly up front. They've lost a few key forwards overseas, but otherwise they managed to retain at least a fairly important chunk of that squad. I think the brand of rugby will be the same. I rate Swayze de Bruin as a coach.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because I don't rate human. And when you look at the acquisitions that the Bulls have made, on paper, they should be a decent outfit.
No, they should, and they've recruited heavily. They've got a bit of money. They ended one of the few franchises who ended the year apparently with a reported profit, so they were able to get guys like Schalk Brits, who was supposed to be at the Storm, Wade from Newland. They jumped at to get him there. So they've got a decent squad, but I chatted to Brits a few weeks back, and he said there has to be realistic expectation, because the coaching staff was only all appointed very late. It was like just about in January. So he said there's going to be a rebuilding period, at least at the beginning of the competition. He thinks I'll get better and better as the competition goes on, but the margins are so small. If you start slowly, you're not going to be able to play catch up. So it's difficult for the Bulls. I don't know about the Storms. I think the Sharks will be the team closest challenging to the Lions. I really think the Sharks, coming off a Currie Cup win and a settled squad, I think they can be competitive, but I also have my doubts about whether Coach Rob de Preer can really bring out the best in them. That's another factor, that off-field factor, whether it plays a part.
It's amazing how we look at a team on paper and we'll say they should be good, but I mean the glue that holds it all together is the coaching staff, and how well they get the best out of people, and do you want to play for them? You know, it's crucially important.
It's a major part of the job.
But we'll be doing another show on previews and reviews of all the Super Rugby this year. So we've got the Six Nations coming up now, and again, as I started and said, everybody said, you know, to me, any one of those teams, bar Italy, which are a shocking team, they shouldn't be in that competition. No disrespect to any pasta-eating people out there, but they just shouldn't. You've got a Scotland heading in the right direction. You've got a Wales, as you said, you know, finished second last year. Gatland's brought through some great depth there. You've got Ireland, to me, a little overhyped. You know, when you look at their historic victory against the All Blacks, and in fairness, they've beaten them twice in the last couple of years. So you know, you can't take anything away from that. But at the same time, New Zealand lost to South Africa in Wellington, I think it was. They should have lost to South Africa in Pretoria. I was at that game. I was gutted there. And you've got Australia are a non-entity as far as I'm concerned in the Six Nations in World Rugby anymore. So I mean, on paper, you know, you got France that just barely lost the Springboks. There's a lot of parity in the Six Nations, and any one team can upset another team except for Italy. Italy be the whipping boys, and we'll lose 5 in a row, and probably take some decent hidings. So for me, is there any value in Ireland at 5-6 to win the Six Nations for you?
I think there's great value in backing Ireland, because I would not only back them. I think they kick off this tournament. They've got a nice schedule. They kick it off with a home game against England. It's the only fixture I can see them having really any trouble, because it's the first one. You never really know. I think England kind of come into it quite happily, the underdogs. John Mitchell's been stirring a bit of fire there, having just joined that coaching staff. Eddie Jones will
Eddie and John always stir up shit, don't they? You know, Eddie can't help himself. I wish he'd be a bit more humble in the way that he deals with stuff, but that's not his style. His style is to get in there and put the needle in. And
so for me, you've got Ireland. If they get the win on Saturday, then I think they'll cruise to the last game. Then it's Wales away from home. That's the one that could topple them if they've got to that point on the verge of a Grand Slam again. But other than that, I mean, it's a great game to start the year off. In the beginning of Feb, we've got Ireland versus England. Can't really ask for much more than that.
Well, the starting game, you're wrong, is Wales versus France. You can't can't ask for better.
On Friday night, you'll be up for that one.
I'll definitely be up for that one. So you think that Ireland at 5-6 are not bad value?
I think you're good.
Okay.
Where are you putting your money on that one? Because you've been on a hot streak in the betting. I saw the Proteas, Newcastle been
15 to 1 on Newcastle beat Man City. Yeah, it was a gut feeling. It could have been gas, but it was the right bet. I thought on that game that 10 to 1 was that Newcastle should have been 10 to 1. So whenever I see a 15 to 1, I'll put a few $100 on it and see what happens. For me, it's Ireland are a great side. There's no doubt about that. But last year's Six Nations, England were atrocious, and you know, I think they played in South Africa the year before their build-up, or their overseas tour was South Africa. They got pummeled here in the first couple games. and they were carrying a lot of injuries last year.
Yeah, they were, and they always talk about the fact the Vunipola brothers get so hyped up about if they're in that team, especially Billy as the back row with all the extra grunt, and that's what Eddie Jones wants. He wanted a bit of extra muscle and go forward. And I think that'll be key in the game against Ireland. They want to get that go forward and nullify the Irish strength in terms of competing at the breakdown. That's going to be the key area. And I think if they can do that, if they can get the forward momentum and deny Ireland from really disrupting their ball, then you never know. Because I think England do actually have some very exciting outside backs, and then if they can get brought into the game with Owen Farrell, got a great long pass, you never know actually what they could do.
Yeah, it's look. For me to say this, and I'm Welsh, this hurts. For me, 3-1 England to win the Six Nations is great value. One, they could win on Saturday. It'll be more competitive than everybody thinks. For me, they've got 3 home games, all against the weakest opposition: Italy, Scotland, and France. Yeah. If Italy they should put 50 or 60 past Italy. So for me, England at 3-1 with 3 home games against the weakest opposition. That means they've got Wales away and Ireland, obviously. Yeah, I like them at 3-1. I've put 1,000 rand down on them to win the Six Nations. Such is the parity, so-called parity, that if Ireland stumble one game, then England probably will win definitely 3. Yeah. And probably 4, and it could come down to bonus points. Yeah. It could come down to not losing by 7 or more and scoring 4 tries. Sure. I think Ireland have 2 home games and 3 away. For me, it's 3-1. I'll take that for $1,000. This weekend, Ireland to beat England. The betting is they're minus 8.5, meaning that the bookies think that Ireland will win by 9 points. There's no way I'd place a bet on Ireland to beat England by 9 points. Yeah. I just don't see the value there. Yeah. I'm going to take England this weekend to not lose by 8 or more points for 2,000 rand. It pays 9 to 10. I've also put down 1,000 rand on England to be the high point scorers in the competition at 11 to 4, and also 1,000 rand at 57 to 20 for England to score the most points in the tournament. Especially with the 3 home games against weaker opposition. This weekend's game, I don't see it being a try-fest. I see it being a...
Yeah, I think one game, one try between the 2 teams, 5 to 7 points, that'll be it.
Yeah, it should be. It should be a cracker. Wales, France. Who are you picking there?
I'm picking Wales, but also by a small margin, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if France upset them. Not at all. I think France are another one of the teams on the rise. And they've picked a really exciting young teenage centre, so I think they're also trying to move into a new sort of era where they play a little bit more dynamically. I think that suits them. So I think, and they picked a huge second row as well. Interesting to see Paul Treu, former Bulls player, making his debut. I think that's going to be another very closely fought game. So I'm picking Wales, but if you come back next week and France will upset them, I won't be surprised at all.
I'm not touching that game for love or money. Yeah. I'll be obviously a passionate supporter.
So the only one you really want to touch is Scotland, Italy.
Well, I don't know what the points bet on that game is, to be honest. And like I said, with betting on, I've also taken is it Laidlaw, Craig Laidlaw, the kicker, to be the top point scorer in the tournament. Pretty deadly with the boot. Yeah, 100%. And if they can put up a cricket score against Italy this weekend, he might get off to a good start and lead from wire to post. So it should be a very interesting weekend. Again, the bet for me is England not to lose by 8 or more points or not to lose by 9 or more points on Saturday. I think that is a gift bet, probably one of the best bets we'll have of the year. But a lot of Irish people, heavy punters, will be backing Ireland, so that might drift out even further in the market. But thanks, Craig. I want to thank you for coming on, and look forward to a great year of rugby.
For sure.
Cheers, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.